The rage, the desperation, you see it in their eyes, don't you? The ones who once smiled at you, patted you on the back, whispered sweet little lies in your ear. Ooh, they're furious now. Why? Because you figured it out. Because you sat there, quiet, observing, taking notes. While they played their little games of deception, you studied the rules. And now, you've turned the entire game against them. They wanted you weak, obedient, blind, but instead you became sharp, calculated, untouchable. And that is what keeps them up at night. So, my dear friends, sit back and watch, because this is the part where they try to rewrite the story. But it's too late, isn't it? You hold the pen now. They designed the rules with one purpose, to keep you in line. They told you what was acceptable, what was respectable, what was right. They built a world where obedience was rewarded and questioning was punished. Step too far out of their invisible boundaries and suddenly you're the problem. At first you played along, why wouldn't you? It seemed like the safest path. You followed their script, spoke when spoken to, stayed in your lane. You believed, like everyone else, that the ones in charge knew best, that their system was built on fairness, on order, on a sense of justice. But then, so you did something they never expected. You stopped fighting the game and started understanding it. You paid attention, not just to their words, but to their actions. You watched how they maneuvered, how they twisted truths, how they manipulated outcomes while pretending everything was fair. And instead of complaining, instead of begging for change, you did something much worse in their eyes. You adapted. You took their strategies, their unspoken rules, their carefully guarded tricks, and you used them. Not recklessly, not foolishly, but with precision. And suddenly, the balance shifted. You were no longer a pawn, you were a player. And that's when everything changed. You always thought they were in control, the ones who pulled the strings, the unseen hands that decided what was real, what was right, what was possible. They dictated the rules while everyone else danced to their rhythm, unaware that every step, every move, every choice was never truly their own. And for a time you were just like the rest, blindly following, unknowingly obeying, thinking your decisions were yours when, in reality, they had already been made for you. But something changed. You started noticing the patterns, the way they nudged people in certain directions, the way they planted ideas in minds and made them think it was their own. You watched how they controlled through fear, through promises, through the illusion of free will. And instead of getting angry, instead of rebelling blindly like so many others before you, you did something far more dangerous. You learned. You studied their moves, their tactics, their methods of persuasion and control. You observed the way they manipulated conversations, twisted narratives, redirected attention. You became fluent in their unspoken language, the subtle art of influence they never wanted you to understand. And once you understood it, once you saw the game for what it truly was, you did the unthinkable. You took the knife from their hands. Now they can't predict your moves, they can't steer you with the same tricks that worked on everyone else. You aren't reacting the way they expected, and that terrifies them, because for the first time, the ones who always saw themselves as the masters of the game are realizing the truth. They are no longer the ones pulling the strings. For so long, they shaped the story. They decided who was the hero, who was the villain, who deserved praise, and who needed to be cast aside. They dictated the roles, handed out the scripts, and expected everyone to follow along. And you played your part, just like they wanted. You nodded at the right moments, agreed when you were supposed to, stayed silent when the truth itched at your throat. But the moment you stepped off their stage, everything changed. At first they tried to ignore it. They assumed you'd come crawling back, that you'd realize the error of your ways and slip back into place. But you didn't. You kept moving, kept thinking, kept tearing apart the illusions they had so carefully built around you. And when they saw you weren't just lost, but that you had found something far greater than their approval, they panicked. Now you're the problem. Not because you're wrong, but because you refuse to be controlled. Not because you're dangerous, but because you refuse to be powerless. And in their world, there is nothing more unforgivable than someone who stops playing the fool. So they rewrite the story. They twist your actions, your words, your intentions. They call you selfish, ruthless, heartless. They paint you in the darkest shades, hoping others will fear you, hoping you will crumble under the weight of their accusations. But deep down, they know the truth. You didn't become the villain. You simply stopped living as their puppet. And the only reason they hate you now is because they could no longer use you. Their anger is not about justice. It's not about right or wrong. It's about control. Control they no longer have over you. They built a world where you were meant to doubt yourself, to second-guess every decision, to seek their approval before taking a step. They wanted you to stay in your place, to believe that stepping outside their lines would bring chaos, failure, ruin. But you stepped out anyway. And now they don't know what to do with you. They expected resistance, rebellion, maybe even a desperate plea to be let back in. What they never expected was for you to smile, to move forward, to thrive without them. That shakes them to their core, because it means their influence was never as powerful as they believed. It means you were never as dependent on them as they wanted you to be. So they lash out. They call you arrogant, ungrateful, reckless. They whisper lies to others, hoping to turn them against you. They try to tear you down, not because you've done something wrong, but because you've done something they cannot comprehend. You've freed yourself from their grip, and their anger, their rage, their desperate attempts to pull you back, that is proof that you've won. Because if you were still under their control, they wouldn't feel threatened. If you were still lost in their illusion, they wouldn't care. But you're not. You've broken free, and now they are left with nothing but their own frustration, their own fear, their own helplessness. And that is what truly eats away at them. It started with betrayal. Maybe it was a lie you uncovered, a truth they never wanted you to see. Maybe it was the moment you realized their loyalty was never real, just a convenient illusion to keep you in place. Or maybe it was quieter than that. A slow unraveling, a series of disappointments that finally made you question everything. At first, the pain consumed you. You searched for answers, for explanations, for something to make it all make sense. You wanted to believe it was a mistake, that somehow the world wasn't as cruel as it seemed. But the more you searched, the clearer it became. It was never a mistake. It was never an accident. The game was always rigged. And that was the moment everything changed. Because instead of breaking, you sharpened. Instead of begging for fairness, you learned how to move within the unfairness. You stopped looking for justice in a system designed to deny it. You stopped expecting loyalty from people who never understood its meaning. You stopped pleading for a place in a world that only valued you when you were weak. You became something they never saw coming. You started thinking like them, moving like them, but with one crucial difference. You weren't playing for their approval anymore. You weren't seeking acceptance. You were building something of your own, something untouchable, something they could never take away. And that's when they turned on you, not because you were wrong, but because you were no longer easy to control. Not because you became ruthless, but because you stopped being naive. And nothing is more dangerous to them than someone who has seen the truth and refuses to look away. So they'll try to turn the world against you. They'll paint you as the villain, the manipulator, the one who changed. But deep down they know the truth. You didn't change. You just stopped playing the fool. Their rage, that's your trophy. Their fear, that's your reward. Because when the masters of manipulation lose control, they do what all weak minds do. They panic. But you don't panic. You don't flinch. Because you saw this coming. So let them rage. Let them scream. Let them twist the story however they please. It doesn't matter anymore. Because you're not in their game. They're in yours.